Helmets have been around for centuries, and they've even become mandatory in many different sporting events or while on particular motorized vehicles. But just how helpful are they? Well, in this article, they took 906 bicycle riders who had been in a crash over the last 9 year period. 701 were helmeted and 205 were not. And what they found was that there was no significant difference in the number of concussions between the two groups. In fact, 42.6 of the helmeted group reported a concussion and 42% of the unhelmeted group. So no real difference in relation to concussions, but where the helmet did seem to shine was when they looked at who had sustained a facial and or skull fracture. Meaning if you'd still like to look just as pretty as you do now or avoid any major trauma, it'd be safe to say that you should probably wear a helmet. But here's something interesting for you to ponder on. In this article, they state that humans adapt their risk-taking behavior on the basis of perceptions of safety. So what they did was they took a group of people and they falsely told them that they were taking part in an eye tracking study where they would compete this battery of computer-based risk-taking assessments. There were 80 participants. They split them in half, 40 on one side, 40 on the other. One group was given just this regular baseball cap and they mounted the eye tracking software to the brim of that hat. In the other group, they gave them like this little dinky bicycle helmet and they strapped the eye tracking software to the helmet. And guess what they found? The group that was wearing the helmet actually took greater risks, even though whether they were wearing a helmet or a baseball cap made no difference in the actual safety of the task that they were told to complete. They go on to say that the results suggest unconscious activation of safety related concepts primes globally increased risk propensity, meaning on a subconscious level, we are primed to take more risk when wearing safety equipment. So, with that being said, I can only speak for myself, but personally, I played football up until I was a freshman in high school. And I can tell you that once you're outfitted with a couple of $100 worth of protective equipment, at least for me, I felt like I could run through a brick wall and still make it home in time for supper. Luckily for me, I wasn't very good, and so I didn't get a whole lot of playing time to actually put my theory to the test. But regardless, with protective equipment comes a willingness to push those boundaries just a little bit further. And according to that last article, helmets aren't protecting against concussions. So what's the real cost benefit? Because, of course, I'm not going to just leave you here with no options and tell you that you're just destined to receive a concussion if you participate in any of these types of physical activities. So, a few years back, I was at this neuroscience conference, and there was a researcher there presenting his work on what they call the Q collar. What's really neat about this device is he started discussing why helmets don't protect against concussions. And the reason is when you place a helmet over your skull, you're essentially just placing some sort of plastic and foam over your head. You're never doing anything to decrease the amount of space within the skull, meaning the brain still has the ability to move about within the skull, beating against the inside of the skull and leading to a concussion. Well, the Q collar came up with a way to fix this. And what this device does is it places a small amount of pressure against the jugular vein, which increases the blood volume within the skull, reducing the ability for the brain to move about within the skull. They've now completed over 25 studies validating their work, and it seems pretty promising in the world of head injuries. Another interesting thing that has made its way onto the scene over the last couple of years is a technology called wave cell. Now, as far as I know, it is currently only being used by Anon Helmets, which is a ski brand, and Trek, the bicycle company. WaveCell is basically a liner that's placed within the helmet. It has kind of like this honeycomb-like structure, and it acts as a shock absorber. Why this is important is because the way that these cells are placed helps absorb and displace linear and rotational forces. In fact, on their website, they claim to reduce rotational forces by up to 73% and reduce the risk of concussion by 80%. This is really cool because we know that the brain is most sensitive to rotational forces, and so if we can reduce them, it would make sense that we would see a reduction in the amount of concussions. How legit is it? I have no idea. This is what they claim, and it sounds really cool, but what I found when digging a little bit deeper is that Trek, the bicycle company, is actually involved in a $5 million lawsuit on the basis that they're inflating the efficacy of this technology in order to justify charging a premium for the helmet. Again, I don't know the validity of this claim, and from what I was able to find, it doesn't seem like this lawsuit has been settled as of yet, but according to this article, they state that they are reduced reducing the risk of concussion and diffuse axonal injury by 27 and 44%. And in a more recent article, they state that they were able to reduce the rate of concussion from 59% to 34%. So are they inflating their data when they put an 80% reduction in the risk of concussion on their website? I don't know, but regardless, in my humble opinion, your brain is the most important organ that you have. And whether it's reducing your risk by 27% or 80%, your brain is a little bit safer as a result. So if you're looking for a helmet, one with wave cell technology is probably not a bad idea.